However, within such marketing partnerships, consumer input must be framed must be framed as advice to the company, not as opinions about or expectations for the company. The differential phrasing might seem minor, but it is critical to achieving the company's unitization goal. Providing advice puts a person in a merging state of mind, which stimulates a liking of one's own identity with another party's. Providing an opinion or expectation, on the other hand, puts a person in an introspective state of mind, which involves focusing on oneself. These only slightly different forms of consumer feedback, and the nonetheless vitally different merging versus separating mindsets they produce can have a significant impact on consumer engagement with a brand. That's what happened to a group of online survey takers from around the United States on a description of the business plan for a new fast casual restaurant Splash that hoped to distinguish itself from competitors through the healthfulness. Who is there? Hello, healthfulness of its menu items. After reading the description, all the survey participants were asked for feedback, but some were asked for any advice they might have regarding the restaurant, whereas others were asked either for any opinions or expectations they might have. Finally, they indicated how likely they would be to patronize a splash restaurant. Those participants who provided advice reported wanting to eat at a splash significantly more than participants who provided either of the other sorts of feedback. And just as we should expect, if giving advice is indeed a mechanism of unitization, the increased desire to support the restaurant came from feeling more linked with the brand. One more finding from the survey clinches the unitization case for me. The participants rated all three types of feedback as equally helpful to the restaurateurs. So it wasn't that those who gave advice felt connected with the brand because they thought they had aided it more. Instead, having to give advice put participants in a togetherness state of mind rather than a separateness state of mind. Just before we lie there, as a talk head massage, as a reaction to massage oil, had to reflect on what they would say about the brand if finding that I have to admit pleases me because it is implicates the persuasive character of the psychological process acting on those advice giving participants. This set of results also clinches for me the wisdom and the ethicality if done in an authentic search for useful information of asking for advice in face-to-face interactions with friends, colleagues, and customers. Face-to-face interactions with friends, colleagues, and customers. It should even prove effective in our interactions with superiors. Of course, it is reasonable and rational to worry about a potential downside that by asking a boss for advice, you might come off as incompetent,
Tulagi त्यो टाइम उसमा गर्नु ल झ्याल बन्द
competent,
नगर्नु
dependent,
मुसुनाहरू आज बाहिर गएन त कि
insecure. While I
अस्ति त
see the
गर्थ्यो फेरि
logic
आज
of such a
कहाँबाट
condition, I also see it as mistaken because as the study of supervisor estimation of collaborators' contributions indicated, the effects of co-creation are not well captured by reason, rationality, or logic, but they are exceedingly well captured by a particular socially promotive feeling in the situation, the highly beneficial for you state of togetherness. The novelist Saul Bellow once observed, when we ask for advice, we are usually looking for an accomplice. I would only add on the basis scientific evidence that if we get that advice, we usually get that accomplice. And what better, a better to have on a project than someone in charge, getting together, getting together.
भइहाल्यो ल
It's time to look back at and more dauntingly look past what we have seen as the mostly favorable consequences of being together and acting together. We learned, for instance, that by installing one or another of those two unitizing experiences in people persuasively, we can arrange to solidify support from a company's shareholders as well as its customers, and to help ensure that soldiers
पख्ताउन भुल जान्छ
will stand and fight rather than flee in wartime. In addition, we found that we can use those same two unitizing experiences to arrange for playmates, classmates, and workmates to like, help, and cooperate with one another.
तले त हुन्थ्यो कि
पर्दैन मलाई. For nearly any parent to fill out a long survey with no financial compensation and even for more for love to immerse in a lab. But here's an unanswered question. Might it be possible to apply the lessons from these arenas to much larger stages, such as those involving as old international enmities, violent religious classes, and simmering racial antagonisms? Could those lessons from what we know about being together and acting together increase our chance of getting together as a species? That's top question to answer in large part because of the many complications inherent in such matters. Still, even on these fraud fraud fields, I believe that procedures that establish our persuasive feeling of unity establish a context for desirable change. Moreover, provided that both parties share the feeling, the desirable change is likely to be mutual, reducing the probability that either party will feel exploited, deepening a sense of togetherness, and raising the likelihood of continued positive interaction. Although this idea sounds hopeful in hand waving theory, it would be naive, owing to the attendant procedural and cultural complications, to presume that the theory would work out smoothly in practice. The specifics of unitizing procedures would have to be optimally designed and enacted with those complexities in mind, something with which the experts on the issues would surely agree and which might be the worthy subject of an entire
जम्ने
volume,
रहेछ है त
a book. पहिला हल्लाउने हो कि Need, needless to say, I would certainly welcome those experts' opinions. Make that advice in that regard. एउटा उयो बुस्ट गर्नु भन्छ ल्याउ त
के
त्यो मेरो ल्यापटप यही रहेछ नि
एक्सिडेन्ट कस्तो अल्टर भएको क्या नि
अल्तर भयो अल्तर अब ऊ त्यस्तो खालको हाम्रो पहिलाको थिएन हाम्रो पहिलाको थिएन
के सिरानी त्यस्तो लिएर आउने
सिरक उयो के बेडसिट क्या
त्यस्तै मगाउँछ
इन्डियाबाट
कसलाई
यो त कहिले गइसक्यो होला कि
तेल लगाएको क्या
तिम्रो नि
लगाइसकेँ मैले
गर
दिउँसै लगाएको पानी के अरे कपडा धुने बित्तिकै
ल
पाक्नु यो हजुरपट्टि यहाँ रहेछ
खैले एउटा त्यो लगाएर हेलो बा सबलाई मायाको आमाको लागि रगत दिन लाग्यो प्लेटलेट्स कम भएको रहेछ
त्यही आएको कुन पोजिटिभ अरे
प्लेटलेट्सको लागि त जुन भयो नि हुँदो रहेछ म मात्रै होइन सबलाई दिन लागिदिएको मैले त स्टुडेन्ट सबलाई
मेडिसिन खाएको हुँदैन दबाईहरू खाएकोले त
दबाईहरू खाएकोले त हुँदैन नखाएकोलाई नि
भयो
भइहाल्ला त्यत्रो हल्ला त भइहाल्छ
जमे
दबाई होइन तल लेदो बसेको हुन्छ A central assertion of this book is that our choice of what to say or do immediately before making an appeal significantly affects its persuasive success. But there's a related choice that occurs even before that one. It is whether on ethical grounds to try to
यहाँ खस्ने होला अन्त नि
attain success in such a new way. I am not alone in considering this an important part of the equation, as ethical questions surface regularly whenever I convey information on the topic of effective persuasion. However, there is one specific type of question, as stated by one specific type of recipient, that is especially relevant to this book and the topic of persuasion. In revealing the secrets of social influence, am I doing more harm than good by giving certain unethical practitioners the means to trick consumers into buying even more of whatever they might be peddling? The individuals most likely to pose the question to me have been representatives of the media. Although the overall experience was mostly a blur, I would recall a steady diet of such media questioning during the only book tour I have ever agreed to undertake. The circuit, the circuit traversed a marathon course of 10 cities in 10 days, each of which included multiple media interviews led by print journalists or radio or TV hosts who had little information about me and, in the bulk of instances, had not read the book. The exchanges were right in a few ways. Some took place numbingly early in the morning, others throughout the day. Some lasted only a few minutes, others as long as an hour. Some were one-on-one interviews, others were led by a pair of co-hosts, and some included audience call-in questions, often of the uncomfortably personal and professionally unanswerable variety. So, Doctor of Influence, how
भयो?
do I? यतातिर गर न अब।
घाँटी
उम्,
टाउको भयो
भइहाल्यो नि टाउको त चिल्लो भयो।
चिल्लो त भयो त होला नि दुखेको फेरि
यतितिरै है
परेछ र
परिरहेछ। त्यतातिर छैन कि दुखेको। बिहान दायाँ बायाँ नलैजाऊ न।
तेल त घाँटीले सोसिसक्यो
हो र?
भयो भयो हातै रातो भयो
Brown balls on the city. Course and include audience calling questions often of the uncomfortably personal and professionally unanswerable. You're ready. So, Doctor of Influence. How do I get my jackass brother-in-law to stop borrowing my tools and then forgetting to return them? And besides, I think he's running around on my sister. What do I do about that? But one feature didn't very much. At some point, the interviewer would raise the more harm than good idea, asking me to respond to the possibility that my book was doing society a disservice by showing devious merchandisers how to use psychology to bamboozle us. त्यहाँ राख्ने होइन कि उता लगेर फाल्ने हुन्न जुठो त्यहाँ राख्ने हो त
कहाँ जुठो त्यो खोलो
खेतालको बिउ त मान्छे रहेछ यार ऊ पेन लिएर आऊ नि त्यो फाल के लेख अनि यहाँ नबुझेको वर्डहरू कतितिर आइसक्यो बेडमा बसेर उ त्यहाँ उयो
खाजा पेन हजुरको झोलामा प्लास्टिक छ त
भित्रपट्टिको सानो उयसमा क्या होइन भित्रपट्टिको सानो हो त्यसमा
छैन छैन
सानो उयसमा के
आतङ्क छैन कि
त्यहाँ होइन के
यो सानो गोली जस्तो होइन छैन यहाँ पनि
यो त ल्यायो
ए
सानो भने कुन हो त्यो होइन
यहाँ त छ नि सानो यहाँ पनि छ सानो हो यो पनि सानो छ नि फेरि जुत्ताहरू धुन पर्छ रहेछ नि त्यत्रो दुईवटा रहेछ जुत्ता पनि
त्यो धुनु पनि छैन तिनीहरू
होइन
होइन यो के हो यो बाम्बोजल भनेको के हो
ब्याम्बुजल
उम्,
बाँसकै होला नि त
हुन्छ
कति धेरै ब्राइटनेस है फेरि मलाई यस्तो धेरै ब्राइटनेस भएको मनै पर्दैन BAMB
ओ ZLE
बाँसै हो अरे
साइकोलोजी टु बाम्बोजलस भनेको बाँस अरे
छक्क्याउनु के छक्क्याउनु अरे यता मात्र बाँस छ तर यहाँ चाहिँ अरूमा यसो हेर्दाखेरि चाहिँ
छक्क्याउनु चाहिँ हो त्यसो भए त्यहाँ
छक्क्याउनु अलमा ल्याउनु धोका दिनु
डिभिएस भनेको
होइन यो लेख्नु पर्ने होला नि यो त फेरि यहाँको त गयो
लेख्नु
अर्को के अरे
अर्को डिभिएस
DEVI
OUS डिभिएस
कुटिल कुटिल छली कपट छली कपटी बाङ्गो कुटिल वा अप्रत्यक्ष
छल कपट It was usually possible to counter the concern by pointing to a pair of aspects of the book that the interviewers, not having read it, did not know. First, it was written for consumers to give them the information necessary to recognize and reject unwanted or unfair influence attempts. Second, much of the information came from the practitioners more often than not. Primarily in their training programs, they were informing me of which procedures reliably got consumers to say yes, although they might not have appreciated the psychological factors that caused their practices to work. The majority of influence professionals knew quite all what did work for them. Consequently, I argued the material in my book wasn't offering any new techniques for practitioners to adopt. Instead, it was balancing the equation by providing information to consumers about the tactics routinely employed on them. With this current book, through those two responses aren't available to me. The conclusions drawn have been principally about how to harness one of this harness. What is harness?
Hardness भनेको harness फरक फरक my god
त्यही भएर अल्छी गर्नुहुन्न भनेको. Influence rather than deflect it, so the consumer defense doesn't apply. What's more, the practice of persuasion as described here isn't widely employed within the community of influence professionals. I can't make the claim this time that I'm just revealing tactics already known to the preponderance भनेको के रहेछ उता रजरमा देवतुलीमा उयो हुन्ला रहेछ प्रोग्राम हुन्ला रहेछ मम्मीहरू जानुहुन्छ त
PRE
के जानुहुन्थ्यो र
PRE
preponderance
PRE
PO
PO
NDE
NDE
RANC
प्रधानता प्रधानता
के हो त्यो भयो
त्यो भनेको
प्रधानता or practitioners only
पूर्वता
rarified अरे rarified भनेको के हो फेरि यो यार
preponderance प्रधानता भनेको प्रमुख होइन र
होला
हो त कहाँ गयो त तेरी
rarified भनेको रेयर हो र
परेन यो यसपाको
सूर्य कुमार राणा मगर सरको क्लास रहेछ है
पूर्वता
कसरी उयोहरू सबकन्सियस माइन्ड र कन्सियस माइन्ड पढाउनुहुन्छ फेरि उहाँले मम्मीहरूले केही बुझ्दैन
अर्को के भन्नु त
RARI
RARI
FIED FIED के
FIED त हो नि दुर्लभ
त्यही त रेयरै रहेछ नि त रेयर if you understand the processes of persuasion well enough to commission them systematically on their behalf. It's therefore a legitimate concern that publication of the information might enlighten certain unethical organizations about how to trick people into assent more effectively. This possibility becomes even more worrisome with the realization that many persuasive processes operate unconsciously and hence go unrecognized.
आजलाई हस्त नमस्ते
भर्खर कति भएको छ 31 मिनट्स भएको छ
8:30 भइसक्यो सुत्न परेन
त्यही त मोबाइल हेर्नु परेन भन्नु न बरु छोडा मम्मीहरू जानुहुन्छ के जानुहुन्थ्यो
जाँदैनन् होला नि खै थाहा छैन
As a result, whenever addressing commercial organizations regarding persuasive practices, I have had to
यो भनेको
change
चाहिँ के हो त
persuasive भनेको मनाउनु के I have had to change direction and revert to a traditional argument against deceptive business tactics. It goes as follows. Although such tactics might increase profit in the short run, once exposed, they will produce unacceptably high costs, mostly in the form of severe damage to the company's reputation and to subsequent trust and future earnings. For a while, I thought this argument quite good for two reasons. First, it makes its case on the dimension of economic vitality. which business leaders have to take into account to maintain growth and indeed survival. That strikes me as more motivating rationale for recommended action in commercial environments than finger wagging about a lack of virtue. Accordingly, I'm sure there will never be a law against shouting ethics in a crowded boardroom. Because unlike fire, in a crowded theater, the term doesn't possess enough mobilizing force due to spur present movement. That's not to say that, as a group, business people wouldn't prefer to be ethical. All else being equal, most would hesitatingly choose the high road. But except hypothetical situations, all else is never equal, and we often see that factors with more motivational punch sells quotes, quotes, financial status reports, competitive concerns.
Yes. के हो बोल अनि तैँले किन फोन गरिस् नबोल्ने भए हुँ? ठिकै छ हो अन्त
Business prevail over higher minded choices in commercial decisions. Besides
मिठी
acting to
खान्छु
promote corporate profitability
मिठाई
through sometimes less than ethical means can be seen as honorable by leaders who feel a moral
हाँ
responsibility to enhance and ensure the economic well-being of their employees. When viewed
नम्दिनी
through this
त्यत्रो 2-3 हजारको त खानु
advertisely
हुँदैन भाइ
titled
सुगर हुन्छ
lens, a
त्यत्रो 2-3
decision
हजार
to
महँगो परेको
stretch
त खानु हुँदैन
the truth to benefit corporate fiscal stability could
बढ्छ
be judged to be the
लाग्छ
ethically proper one. Therefore, I assure
बरु 1000 रुपियाँ
myself
आधा किलो
any
त आउँछ अर्को
argument
डल्लो
pointing
डल्लो
out how deceptive
बरु 1000 रुपियाँको
practices
त आधा किलो त
actually
आउँछ अर्को डल्लो डल्लो
threaten the bottom line would be compelling. The second reason is that the case of reputational damage would be telling to business decision makers is that the
मिठो
evidence
थियो
supporting it is solid. The size of financial loss from reputational consequences can be
ए त्यो ओट जस्तो
substantial, as large
राखे त
economic
अनि
injury
पछि
has
खान
been
मिठो हुँदैन
shown to
अहिले त
flow
धेरै हुँदैन
from
त
the
कहाँ मिठो हुन्छ
reputational impact of false advertising, deceptive bidding practices, and financial misrepresentations. For example, a 2005 study of 585 firms
के अरे
subjected to us
खाइसके भाइ
Securities and Exchange Commission SEC enforcement proceedings and financial misrepresentation found that
कति दिन
on
भयो
average companies lost 41% of their market value after
कति
the
दिन लाग्यो
misconduct was made public and that nearly two-thirds of the loss stemmed from reputational harm. Indeed, 80% of Americans stated that their perception of the ethicality of a particular company's business practices has a direct effect on their decisions to purchase its
के अरे
goods or services. Such effects received
अँ
more recent validation in 2015 when shortly
राजन सरहरू
after
आएन
Volkswagen's diesel emissions trickery became known.
पोहोर त आएन
Its sales dropped to
पोहोर त
one
आएको थिएन
sixteenth of the industry average. It suffered the largest annual loss in company history, and its reputation among vehicle owners went from 70%
के थाहा त्यो
favorable to 80% not favorable. Plus, the damage is singularly difficult to undo. Research indicates that the
के
reputable company attempting to recover lost trust would need to
पढेर बस्न
demonstrate its
राख
newfound integrity consistently and on many occasions
ल
to
राख
convince the weary that the firm's
पढ्ने छैन त्यसै फोन गर्थे अनि किन फोन गरेको भनेर
values
त्यसै
had
अरे
changed. Such a
के भयो भनेको
recovery
बोल भनेपछि
process
के बोल्ने अरे
could take years, by which time the company's former
सोच्यो
customer
नि
and
त्यो
clients are likely to
नहोस्
have established links to rivals' products and services.
छोरी
Satisfied
आमासँग
that
सुत्यो अरे
this strong economic argument would convince business leaders to avoid
खै
devious
आमाको बिहान उठ्दा
practices.
सीमामा दुध गान्ने राखेको थियो भने
I was content to describe the World Kings
दुध खुवाउन पर्छ भाइ
of
पछि
praise
फिर्तीको
was influence strategic to
त्यो
them,
गान्ने भयो
provided that I invariably made a reputational
बिहान
disaster
उठ्दा दुखेको थियो
case
भने
as well. Then I read the results of a pair of global surveys
मोबाइल
that
हेर्न पाउँछ
forced
भने
me to change my thinking. They are revealed that senior business leaders are very much aware of the evidence in support of the reputation-based case I was making, but that comfortably large numbers of them are willing to undertake misconduct anyway, despite understanding the risks. Close to half of high-ranking executives reported they would act unethically to get a retained business. In addition, sales and marketing staffers who were most likely to endorse ethically dubious conduct to secure a win were least likely to be questioned about it by the company. Finally, the employees of these firms saw few actions taken at the top either to prevent profit enhancing ethical violations or to punish those involved after the fact. As a consequence, the amount of unethical activity on the part of commercial organizations remains distressingly high. Apparently, many senior leaders are cognizant of the potentially ruinous consequences of discovered ethical misconduct but are not deterred by them. That seems clear. What's not is why not. It's conceivable that these leaders are engaging in a form of psychological compartmentalization, mentally walling of their knowledge of the reputational risk of wrongdoing from their active participation in or tacit permission of it. But I don't think so. Those at the highest level of an organization don't get to their prominent positions by systematically ignoring clear and present dangers. I would favor a similar explanation. They just don't expect to get caught. They wouldn't engage in misconduct if they thought it would become visible to penalty welding customers, clients, and regulators. This explanation fits with findings from studies of crime deterrence, demonstrating that individuals who commit violations carrying significant negative consequences do not believe they will be caught, otherwise, they would be unlikely to undertake the punishable activities in the first place. Relaxed fee. In most workplace business, casual rules for dress apply only on Fridays for service, so that in many companies, business casual rules for ethics apply daily. मैले पढेको उसलाई टाउको दुखिरहेको छ यहाँसम्म त पढ्नु परेन
किन पढ्न पर्यो
दिल्लीमा डिलेमा भनेको के होला
ढिलो होइन
Well, dilemma. The dilemma is easy to
ढिलो त
see.
हो नि
On the one hand, many business leaders will likely be dissuaded from unethical activity by all-rhyming economic considerations. On the other hand, the
ए
caution
दुविधा अरे
दुविधा लेख नि त तिमीले।
धर्म सङ्कट
dissuaded dissuaded पनि हे गर न 43 minutes भइसकेछ।
के भनेको
के अरे डिस
डिआइएस
यस
यस
युए
युए
डिइडी
डिआइएसएसयुएडिई
डिइडी के
डिइडी
त्यो पुरै डिई मात्र गरे नि हुन्छ डिसुएडेड सुएडेड डिइडी
निरुत्साहित
ए डिसुएडेड भनेको
डिआइएसएस होइन त विच्छेद
निरुत्साहित भनेको बुझिसक्यो मैले।
म त बुझेको थिएन
निरुत्साहित भनेको बुझेको छैन
पहिलोचोटि सुनेको
हो र अस्तिको तिम्रो कुराले मलाई अगाडि बढ्नलाई निरुत्साहित गरिएको छ भने के हो
नगर्ने सल्लाह दिनु
तिमीले चाहिँ
विपरीत परामर्श
उत्साहित गर्नुको सट्टा निरुत्साहित गर्यो क्या मलाई।
निराश पारिएको काम गर्न
Unethical activity by all rhyming economic considerations. On the other hand, the cautionary economic argument against such activity has failed to reduce misconduct because it involves an expectation of discovery which most perpetrators भनेको चाहिँ के रहेछ यो फेरि perpetrators अरे पिआर
एकै ठाउँमा हो
ओके पिआर
पढेन
perpetrators अरे
पिइआरपी
ई ई
ई
टिआरए
टिओआर
टिओआरएस
अपराधी
pass. Perpetrators surely were not possessors when deciding to act. How can we extricate ourselves from the horns of this dilemma? Only possibility would be to acknowledge business leaders' understandable tendencies to weigh economic factors heavily in business decisions, and then to document several one rows अरे फेरि के हो यस्तो यार लाइफमा नदेखेको वर्डहरू आउँछ
ओएल
ई
इआरओयुएस
यस अनर्स
कठिन
अनर्स अरे वान रस फाइनेन्सियल
एउटै शब्दमा पनि इङ्ग्लिसमा कति धेरै उस हुने के
the penalties that flow from unethical conduct even if it goes undetected by the public. Along with my
घृणित पनि हुँदो रहेछ
colleagues Jessica L.I. and Adriana Samper, I have recently conducted research to provide evidence of such expenses that come from the responses of individuals inside, not outside the organization. We have also tried to detail how these harmful costs can develop and how they can slip undiagnosed under the radar of most business systems. Worry this. Finish. Well,
Your holidays, Hasik.